When billionaire Grayson Cole secretly followed his black housekeeper one cold evening, he thought she might be stealing from him. But what he saw that night didn't just change his mind, it broke his heart and changed his life forever. The story began like any other day at the Cole estate, quiet, polished, and painfully empty. The halls echoed with nothing but the soft ticking of antique clocks and the hum of machines that kept his fortune running. Grayson had built an empire from the ground up. But money couldn't fill the silence that had swallowed his life since his wife died 6 years ago. Then one afternoon, he heard something unusual: laughter. Not the polite laughter of guests or business partners, but the kind that came straight from joy. He followed the sound down the back corridor, past the glass doors that opened onto the garden. There she was, Tanya Brooks, his housekeeper, playing tag with 2 children under the oak tree. Her son was about 10, her daughter maybe 6. The boy's sneakers were worn thin, and the little girl's braids bounced as she giggled uncontrollably. Tanya's dark skin glowed in the sunset, her eyes full of life as she spun them both around, laughing until she fell to her knees in the grass. Grayson stood there, transfixed. In that moment, something inside him cracked open. He hadn't heard that kind of happiness in years, not since his wife, Emily, used to hum in the kitchen and dance barefoot in the rain. The next morning, Tanya arrived as she always did, early, quiet, focused. She didn't know he had seen her the night before. Her smile was smaller now, her laughter gone. She moved with purpose, like someone who carried the world but never wanted anyone to see the weight. As she cleaned his office, Grayson finally spoke. "You always hum the same tune," he said, breaking the silence. Tanya froze, startled, then smiled faintly. "It's something my mama used to sing when we were little. Guess it stuck." "It's nice," he said awkwardly. "Peaceful." She chuckled softly. "I hum so I don't think too much." He nodded but said nothing more. Her words lingered in his mind long after she left. Later that week, Grayson overheard 2 other employees talking near the pantry. "She's got 2 jobs now," one whispered. "Working nights at the diner just to keep the lights on." "Still behind on rent, though," the other replied. "Landlord's threatening to kick her out again." Grayson's stomach twisted. Tanya worked in his mansion 5 days a week. How could she still be struggling that much? That evening, curiosity, or maybe guilt, got the better of him. He told his driver to take the night off, grabbed his keys, and followed Tanya's old minivan when she left. It rattled down cracked city streets before stopping in front of a worn-down duplex. He parked a few houses away and watched. Tanya stepped out, exhaustion in her posture, but her face lit up the moment her kids ran toward her. They hugged her so tight she almost fell over. She carried them inside, balancing a grocery bag full of cheap canned food. Through the cracked curtains, he saw them at a tiny wooden table with mismatched chairs. Tanya prayed with her children before they ate, her hands clasped, eyes closed in gratitude. The meal was simple, mac and cheese and water, but she smiled like it was a feast. Grayson's eyes burned. He'd spent millions hosting charity galas that meant nothing, and here was a woman thanking God for powdered cheese. After dinner, Tanya tucked her children into a shared bed and kissed their foreheads. Then she sat at a small desk with an old sewing machine. The soft hum filled the quiet night as she worked, patching clothes, repairing uniforms, maybe earning a few extra dollars to get through the week. Grayson sat in his car for nearly an hour, unable to leave. That image, her working alone by dim light while her kids slept, etched itself into his chest. He realized how blind he'd been to the real world outside his mansion's gates. The next morning, Tanya arrived with dark circles under her eyes but still managed to smile. "Morning, Mr. Cole." He hesitated, then asked, "You ever take a day off?" She laughed lightly. "If I did, who'd pay the bills?" He wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in his throat. That afternoon, heavy rain started pouring. Grayson looked out his office window and saw Tanya rushing outside to bring in the garden cushions before the wind destroyed them. Without thinking, he grabbed an umbrella and ran after her. "Tanya," he shouted. "You'll get drenched." She turned, water dripping from her curls, laughing breathlessly. "It's just rain, Mr. Cole. I'll survive." He stood beside her, umbrella trembling in his grip. "You shouldn't have to work this hard," he said quietly. She blinked, surprised, then smiled. "I do what I have to. My kids are my reason." For a moment, the world stood still. Rain poured, thunder rolled, but all Grayson could see was her determination, her grace under pressure. That night, back inside, he couldn't shake the image of her soaked in the rain, still smiling. He opened her employee file, clean record, no complaints, years of consistent work. Under emergency contact, there was no one listed. He leaned back in his chair, guilt clawing at him. He'd built skyscrapers, bought companies, and won awards, but what had he really built? The next morning, he made a call. "I want a fund set up," he told his lawyer. "For employees who fall behind, medical bills, rent, emergencies. I'll cover all costs, no questions asked." The lawyer hesitated. "That's generous, Mr. Cole. Who should receive it first?" Grayson's voice softened. "Someone who's already earned it 1,000 times over." 2 days later, an envelope appeared on Tanya's doorstep. No name, no note, just enough cash to save her home. The next morning, she walked into his office, trembling, holding the envelope. "Mr. Cole, someone left this for me. I can't take it." He looked up. "It's not a mistake." "Why?" she whispered. "Because you deserve a break," he said simply. Tears welled in her eyes. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." He smiled softly. "You already have." But Grayson didn't know that Tanya's story ran deeper than money, and the truth waiting behind it would soon leave him in tears. The next few weeks at the Cole estate felt different. For the first time in years, there was warmth in the air that money couldn't buy. Tanya worked as she always did, carefully, humbly, but Grayson noticed her laugh a little more often now. Her eyes seemed brighter, lighter. And yet, there was still something she wasn't saying. He could sense it in the way her smile faltered when she thought no one was watching, or how she flinched when her phone buzzed and she had to step out of the room. One afternoon, Grayson came home early from a meeting to find Tanya in the living room, quietly folding linens. "You're early," she said, startled. "Meeting ended sooner than expected," he replied, setting his jacket down. Then, after a moment of silence, he added softly, "You look worried lately. Is everything all right?" She hesitated, her hands tightening around the towels. "It's complicated." "Try me," he said. Tanya took a shaky breath. "My son, Isaiah, he's been getting into fights at school. He's a good kid, but some kids tease him. Because of who I am. Where we live. And because I work here." Grayson's chest tightened. "They make fun of him because you clean my house." Tanya gave a sad laugh. "They say his mom works for rich people. Kids repeat what they hear at home. He's been angry lately, angry at the world." Grayson nodded slowly, guilt pressing on him. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "No one should be ashamed of honest work." That night, he couldn't sleep. He stared out over his city skyline, his empire, and realized how divided it really was. He thought of Isaiah, fighting to defend his mother's dignity while he, a billionaire, had done nothing to change that world. The next day, Grayson did something unusual. He asked Tanya if he could meet her children. She looked shocked at first but eventually agreed. That Sunday afternoon, he drove his black SUV to her neighborhood, not as the billionaire boss, but as a man who wanted to understand. When Tanya opened the door, her daughter, Nia, clung to her leg, shy at first. Isaiah stood protectively beside them, cautious but polite. Grayson smiled. You must be Isaiah. Your mom talks about you. Isaiah blinked in surprise. She does. All the time, Grayson said. She says you're the man of the house. The boy's chest lifted a little, pride flickering through his guarded eyes. Tanya watched silently, a mixture of worry and warmth in her expression. Grayson stepped inside, careful not to intrude. The house was small, clean, and filled with signs of love, drawings on the fridge, a Bible on the table, 2 small backpacks by the door. He sat down on the couch, feeling strangely grounded. They talked for a while. Mia showed him her coloring book. Isaiah asked about his cars. Tanya served lemonade in mismatched glasses. For a man who could buy the world, this tiny living room felt more real than anything he owned. When he left later that evening, Isaiah ran to the door. Mr. Cole. Yes. Thanks for not looking down on us. Grayson froze. Why would I? The boy shrugged. Most people do. Grayson knelt down, meeting his eyes. Isaiah, your mom works harder than anyone I've ever met. You've got nothing to be ashamed of. Ever. That moment would replay in Grayson's mind for days. The following week, something unexpected happened. Tanya didn't come to work. The staff said she called in sick, but when she didn't show up the next day either, Grayson grew uneasy. On the 3rd day, he couldn't take it anymore. He drove to her neighborhood again. When he knocked, Isaiah opened the door, his eyes red from crying. It's Mom, he said weakly. She collapsed last night. The doctors said she's exhausted. Her blood pressure's too high. They're keeping her in the hospital. Grayson's heart dropped. What hospital? Within an hour, he was there. He found Tanya in a small, dim hospital room, 4 tubes attached to her arm. She looked pale but still managed to smile when she saw him. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. I had to, he said softly, taking a seat beside her. You scared your kids half to death. Tears welled in her eyes. I just pushed too hard. I didn't want them to struggle the way I did. Grayson reached for her hand. You've carried the world long enough. Let someone else carry it for a while. That night, he made another decision, this one from the heart, not his wallet. He hired a nurse for her, covered every medical expense, and personally made sure Isaiah and Nia were taken care of while she recovered. Days passed. Tanya slowly regained her strength, but something in her changed. When she returned to work, she found Grayson waiting for her in the garden. I've been thinking, he began. You've given years to this house, Tanya. More than most would. I want to promote you, house manager. Better pay, shorter hours. And when you're ready, maybe help me with something more. She blinked, confused. Something more. Grayson smiled gently. I want to start a foundation, for single parents, families like yours. You know what they need better than anyone. I want you to help me build it. Her lips trembled. You trust me with that? I'd be lost without you, he said. You've reminded me what this money is actually for. Tanya wiped her eyes, her voice shaking. You don't know what this means, Mr. Cole. He looked at her, his voice soft. Grayson. Just Grayson. From that day on, their lives began to change, not in some fairy tale way, but in quiet, meaningful steps. Tanya became his partner in building the foundation. Isaiah's grades improved. Nia started drawing pictures of their family, sometimes including Grayson in them. And one evening, months later, as they watched families receive the help they dreamed of, Tanya turned to him with tears in her eyes. You followed me that night because you thought I was stealing, didn't you? She said teasingly. Grayson laughed softly. Yeah. I thought I'd catch a thief. Instead, I found something I didn't even know I'd lost. What's that? He looked at her and smiled, the kind that came from deep inside. A reason to care again. As the sun set behind them, the crowd's laughter filled the air, the same kind of laughter that had once drifted through his lonely mansion. Only this time, it wasn't coming from the garden. It was coming from the life he'd helped rebuild, with the woman and family who'd rebuilt him in return.